Hello and welcome back to another RouterGods video. My name's Humphrey and we're going to go over how to pick the best location for your next IT job, whether it's a technical support job, whether it's a network engineering job, or maybe even a sales engineer or pre-sales engineer job. So whenever I change jobs, which actually has happened quite often in my life, I go through this list of, I guess you could call it a matrix or a checklist or whatever you want to call it. But I go through this list to determine, if I should take the job or not. And one of the things that I like to talk about is picking the best location. Now, in summary, generally, when you're looking at a job and you're deciding whether to go to a city or not, we're going to bring up Google Maps, or trusty Google Maps here. And so you're looking at the United States. And of course, if you're not in the United States, you can still use this list that I'm going to give you, but of course you're going to need to modify it a bit depending on your location. So for example, in the United States, there's certain high-tech hotspots that are well known for IT, and those hotspots will be places like Seattle. Right up here, Seattle, because you've got Amazon, you've got Microsoft and Bellevue, you've got a high concentration of IT companies. And of course, everyone knows Silicon Valley, Bay Area, San Francisco. You've got the Twitter, you've got the Google, you've got the Apples, etc., etc. NVIDIA's there as well. LA and Silicon Beach, Pasadena, Orange County, that's another hotbed. Irvine, that's another hotbed of IT, IT talent and IT companies. And then as we go kind of eastward, we've got Austin, we've got Dallas, Chicago's pretty good, and of course the New York area. New York would probably be, maybe second to Silicon Valley, depending on what you're looking for. Right? So if you were looking at maybe Japan, then you'd probably be concentrating in Tokyo. If you're looking at, Singapore. But if you're looking at Malaysia, you'd be looking at KL. So, this will change depending on where you are. But in general, what I recommend to people is if you're early in career and you have a choice between picking a Silicon Valley or picking Wyoming or Utah or something like that, assuming you're single, you don't have a lot of bills, you should always, always, always pick the Silicon Valley type places, because you're going to have several advantages, several things that are going to come into play. You're going to have pay. You're going to have higher pay. You're going to have, now cost of living is going to come into that, but we'll talk about that. You're going to have better infrastructure, things like internet, things like coffee shops, things like subways. Now, you also have to consider, are you early in your career or are you late in your career? Are you ambitious? So are you looking to get into leadership? Are you looking into getting into bigger companies? Are you looking to get into a FANG company, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, Facebook, etc. Google, Google's the G in FANG. And then, picking the Silicon Valley areas, the Austin areas, the New York areas, you have a critical mass of big name companies, and that will help you in the long run. And then finally, something that a lot of people don't think about is in these places where you have a lot of IT tech workers, you're going to have a lot of random interactions. You're just going to run into people at the coffee shops as you're doing your coding boot camp. So let's say you've gone on codeacademy.com and you've purchased the annual subscription and you're doing your exercises at Starbucks. This has happened to me, right? I'm doing some Ruby on Rails stuff at a coffee shop. Someone's going to notice. And someone could be a recruiter, could be someone working at a big name company, and you'll talk and there's a job opening and boom, like now you're interviewing. You're going to have many more of those interactions in a place like New York and Silicon Valley versus if you're in Wyoming. Now, I know I'm picking on Wyoming. There's no reason for that. I'm just the first state that came to my mind. Okay, so let's talk about the pay. In general, places like Silicon Valley, New York, Seattle, the pay is going to be higher. Pay is definitely going to be higher. For a network engineering job, you're probably talking in those areas of 100 to maybe 130, 150 even. So that's pretty decent pay. If you're talking about sales engineering jobs, you're going to see 180, 200, 250 type of salaries. Now, going along with the pay, of course, those areas have a higher cost of living. Your rent is going to be higher. Here in Singapore, I'm paying $3,000 for my $3,000 a month Singapore, which is somewhere in the neighborhood of $2,000 to $2,200 US dollars per month for a 650 square foot condo. One day I will do a video of this condo when I clean everything up. It's super messy right now, but I'll show you what you typically get for $3,000. Of course, COVID affects that. So of course, higher cost of living. Things like parking. In San Francisco, parking sucks, right? You're going to pay, I think I know a lady that's paying somewhere like $800 to $1,000 a month for the parking spot, which is like rent in some places. Even to own a car, or parking at a parking structure could be something crazy like $7 every 15 minutes or $7 every 30 minutes. So of course the cost of living is going to be more. But along with that, the compensation with that is your infrastructure is going to be better. Your mass transit, your MRT. Here in Singapore, MRT for like $1 something Singapore, I can travel pretty much wherever I want in the nation, in the city-state. So that's pretty good. I can get a Grab taxi for $8 to $12 pretty much anywhere within the general vicinity. Now, if I want to go across the island, I've got to pay somewhere in the neighborhood of $25 to $35. And if I get hit with a surge, it could go up to $30 to $45. But in general, the infrastructure is much better. The eating, oh my God. So if I want to cheap out and go to a hawker center, I can eat for pretty cheap. A little different in San Francisco, but you don't have to pay through the nose all the time in places like San Francisco and Seattle. You can find somewhat affordable eating. And of course, coffee shops are open late at night. Party, if you like to party, the party infrastructure is definitely set up for that. Here in Singapore, the drinking infrastructure is definitely there. If you want to drink, you can drink yourself to your kidneys rot. That will be another video. The expat drinking scene, and things like going to you want to look at interesting buildings, you want to look at the art and stuff like that, museums. Infrastructure is built up in those large cities. Now, if you come from a small city, that's a slam dunk. If you come from, I grew up in Redlands, California, which is right now it's a town of, I think, 65,000, but when I was growing up, it was like 35, 40,000. So it's considered a small town. So when you come from a place like that and you have a choice of going to LA, go to school in UCLA, working in West LA, that's a no-brainer. You have to pick it. You have to go to the big city because you will see so much and you will experience so much in those places like New York City, Seattle, San Francisco, that it's going to make you into a more worldly person. You're going to interact. I know we're kind of getting to the last bullet point, the interaction, but you're going to interact with other cultures. So in a small city, you're kind of interacting with a very small group. If you come from, let's say, the Midwest, you're going to be interacting with a lot of Caucasians, right? You're Caucasian, I'm Caucasian, everyone around me is Caucasian. There's no Mexicans, there's no African Americans, or maybe not that many. There's probably not that many Asians. But when you go to a large city, it's going to be a hodgepodge of everything. Here in Singapore, it's everything under the sun. So you get to learn their culture, you get to learn their religions, you get to learn their language, you get to eat their food, which is really great. So definitely err on the side of the big cities early on. Okay, another thing to ask yourself is, are you early in your career? Are you just starting out from college? Let's say you just graduated college and you're looking for your first job, versus you're later in your career, you are at a director level, you have a couple kids, or you're married. Well, hopefully you're married, you have kids and you're married. Because the situation, if you have kids and you're not married or divorced, that's different and kind of sucks. But, are you early or late? If you're early in your career, boom, go to the city. Go to the city. Go to the central places. Go to the hotbeds of IT. Mix it up, because you're going to find other young people there, and it's going to be, I think, a little easier to make friends. If you're later in your career and you're a bit older, so let's say you're in your 40s or 50s, you may be looking for something more quiet. So you don't care about the partying anymore. You've partied your guts out. You have a wife and kids, and you kind of want the bigger house with the backyard. And you'd be looking at Austin or Dallas or Miami, Florida, right? Not necessarily the San Franciscos and the Seattles, generally speaking. So, take that into consideration. If you've already done the big city life and you've kind of calling it quits, that is completely fine. Now, the situation that I'm in, I kind of did a rebound. I went from Redlands, a small town, into LA, and then I kind of moved back out. And then now, after I'm making some money, I've moved back into the urban hotbed of craziness. And the reason is it's actually quite selfish, I guess. Maybe not selfish is the wrong word to use, but now that I'm making money, now that I have a decent income and savings and all that good stuff, and a little bit older, I'm kind of, I guess you could call it the Van Wilder second wind aspect of it, where I can go back into the city and just go completely nuts, right? Versus before, when I was early in my career, I'm not making a lot of money. Yeah, you're in the city, but it does kind of suck because you can't just drop 500 on a crazy night out like can be done right now, right? You can't go to a rooftop bar, right? So, before, maybe once in a while I'll go to a rooftop bar, but now it's like there's not even a thought like, cool, there's a spot open tonight, let's do it, right? Whereas before, you got to be careful because you can't be plunking down 500 a night every night in a row, right? When you're early on. Later, it can be done. So a lot more things open up to you when you have money, and that's going to be another video too, because I was asked a question in the comments: do you go for time with little to no money, or do you go for big money with little time? And what a lot of people don't realize is when you have money, you can actually trade that for time. But that's another video. Okay, ambitions. So if you want to progress, you want to become a senior network engineer, you want to go into sales, you want to move up, you're a go-getter, and you're not satisfied with your life. Big city all the way, because you will meet other people who are also ambitious. You'll have lots of openings because there will be a lot of change. People promote, so as people promote, there'll be empty spots. You'll run into people that know of empty spots, that know of openings, and you can get help. People help other people. It's very interesting because as people promote, they help others, and at the manager and director level, it's pretty awesome because, actually at my level too. So I remember what it was like to scrounge for a job, to put out the 10 resumes, to interview all the time, to polish up the resume and the LinkedIn, almost kind of like begging for a job, like, please, sir, hire me type of thing. And that does kind of suck, right? After you do that for a while, you don't want to go back to that. As you get older and as you gain a reputation for yourself and you work at large companies and stuff like that, it becomes a lot easier. In fact, you don't have to look anymore. And that's pretty awesome. The jobs come to you. It's kind of an interesting flip of the scenarios. Before I was begging, now I'm just kind of sitting, I'm kind of swatting them away, right? So on LinkedIn, once you get really good on LinkedIn and people know you, the offers come in, and I just, nope, I'm not taking that. I'm not taking that. This looks interesting. I might talk to this guy. So, your ambitions. If you start off in a big name city and you get yourself known and you make your mark and you work on big projects and you interact with big companies, and this kind of gets into the critical mass of big name companies. If you get a big name company under your belt, so let's say you get an NVIDIA, you get a Facebook, you get a Google on your resume, you're done. Like, you do 1 or 2 years at a Google, you're done. You don't need to beg for a job anymore. You're done. And I noticed that after working for Megacorp at Cisco, and I should probably do my disclaimer. I should have done it at the front. Everything I say is not necessarily that of my employer. All my statements are that of my own. Okay, with that out of the way. So when you're working at a lot of companies that aren't known throughout the world, and you have a good network engineer, senior network engineer, abuse manager, all that type of stuff. Maybe it helps locally. Other local companies will know, okay, I know company A, yeah, they're pretty cool, right? But when you get a Google or a Cisco under your belt, and it's on your resume, it's on your LinkedIn, and you've got, let's say, 5 years of Cisco, 2 years of Cisco, 2 years of Google, the hits keep coming, right? You're set for life pretty much, both financially and as a professionally speaking. So those companies are generally located in the Austins and the Silicon Valleys and the Singapore. So you got to go there. That's your chance to make it big. Even if you don't start off at a FANG company, you can work your way up to it a lot easier when you're local, right? So if you're interviewing, so I've never interviewed for Facebook, but I would suspect that if you're in Silicon Valley, if you're close to headquarters and you apply for Facebook and you come in as a interview as a network engineer, hey, I live the next town over. My technical abilities are this. You do well in the interview. I think that's going to look a lot better. And you know this person at NVIDIA. You already know a couple people at Facebook. That's going to look a lot better than if you're coming from outside of the general area and trying to come in. So the critical mass of companies is just a huge, huge advantage. I'll give you a good example here in Singapore. So in Singapore, let's pull up our Google Maps. Boom, Singapore. I'll show you a real life example here. Okay, so in Singapore, we've got a couple areas where IT workers and big IT companies tend to cluster around. So one place is going to be right here, the Maple Tree Business Center. So the Maple Tree Business Center is kind of this Alexandria Techno Park. So this area right here, this is where you have the Oracles, the Samsungs, the Googles, the Ciscos, the HPs, and blah, 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 in the GovTech, which GovTech is kind of like the DARPA of Singapore. So they're all clustered here. And so what's great about this is when you go to dinner or lunch or Starbucks, and there's also bars and stuff like here, when you're out with your coworkers or just even you got your laptop up at the 2 or 3 Starbucks that are in this area, and you're doing your work, a guy from Google may walk by and see what you're doing, and hey, chat the person up. A recruiter for Facebook could be walking by, or a recruiter for GovTech. I don't know if they have recruiters, but you get the point. The chance of running into other people in this area that are working for these big companies is extremely high. And also, you'll start having drinking buddies and dinner buddies from other companies. You're going to mix it up, right? So this is one place, and then the other place is over here on the east, Changi Business Park. Kind of this. I don't know where the exact boundaries are, but I think it's kind of like that. It's cheap rent because it's near the airport. That's my guess. But I think the story goes from my Singaporean buddies, the story goes that Singapore wanted to make a prestigious area for big companies to set up their HQs. And so the companies set up their HQs, and then they're like, this is kind of inconvenient. It's far away from downtown. It's next to airport. Yeah. So what they did is, it's kind of funny how this went down. The story goes that all these big companies, they kind of started here a little bit. There were tax incentives and all that. And then these big companies said, fuck it, right? I'm moving my headquarters down here into the awesome downtown central business district area. But I'll keep my data centers and my IT people here. So that's the dungeon. If you're an IT guy, that's your dungeon that you stay in, and maybe you're not necessarily in the central part. Once again, I don't know if that's true. If you're Singaporean and you know the full story behind this, I'd love to interview you for a video somewhere once this circuit breaker lockdown 2.0 or whatever the hell stops. So when you're in these big cities, it's much better chance, much higher chance of random interactions. You're going to run into people. You're going to run into meetup groups. Meetup groups are great, right? You're going to run into those places, and you're going to learn like the best intel you can get. If you want to get into Facebook, talk to someone at Facebook in person, right? Hey, what works? How did you interview? They may even refer you to an opening at Facebook. All these big companies, the employees get a bounty. They get a bonus if they refer someone and you get hired. Some companies it's $1,000. Other companies it's $1,500. Some it's $5,000, right? And in fact, I know there's some people out there, they make a decent chunk of their salary off of just referring people. I mean, if you can refer a person for $5,000, if you can refer a person every couple months, that's a big chunk of money, right? So random interactions, Starbucks, the dance floor. Well, I don't know how many IT people go on the dance floor. Certainly not me, but restaurants, just walking around, right? Planned interactions, going to a meetup, they may have open house at the headquarters. Go. I mean, you're in the next tower over, just go, right? In short, pick the big city. Early on, pick the big city. That should be the lens that you look at things. Pay, yes, pay will be higher, but take into cost of living, where you are in your life. Well, how are your ambitions? Right? Whether you have kids, your wife, do you want the bigger yard and the bigger house? Do you want the slower pace of life? Or do you just want to, boom, mix it up and go completely nuts? But I think the most important part of this is these two things at the end. You got to be close to the big companies. You got to have the NVIDIAs and the Googles and the Facebooks all around you. And you got to put yourself in a situation where you interact with people, or you run into people. That's going to help you out a lot better. All right, so this was a not as quick video, but it was a video I've been meaning to do for a long time. How to pick the best location for your IT jobs. This is the thought process I run into whenever I pick a job. That's exactly why I'm here in Singapore. So once again, I hope you're doing safe and well wherever you are. I will see you on the next video. And if you have any comments or questions, put them in the comments below in the video. Thumbs up if you liked it. It really helps me out and grow the channel on the way to hopefully one day a silver 100K button. But stay safe. Take care. See you later. Bye.